Welcome to another episode of Electable. I'm Deb Chubb, and our podcast is sponsored by the Indiana Women's Action Movement. Today, we are very pleased to be talking with another U.S. congressional candidate on the Democratic ticket up for election in 2022. This is Gary Snyder from Huntington County, the town of Huntington in Huntington County, in Indiana, in the 3rd congressional district. So Gary, I'd love first to let you just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to this decision to run.
Okay. Well, my name's Gary Snyder. I am the father of 7 children, 6 daughters. I've been married for 26 and a half years to my wife, Pepper. And I currently am a small business owner. I own and operate Indiana Talks Network, which this show airs on during the weekdays. Actually, all week. That's a digital radio station. That's we market statewide. We have a great national lineup, including the Stephanie Miller program, Tom Hartman, Democracy Now! And then we also carry, Hoosier-based radio personalities like yourself. We run reruns of my show and, some of the other great Hoosier personalities. It is a left of center radio station. So if you're expecting to hear stuff like you hear on WIBC or WOWO or any of those wacko right stations, you're not going to hear that here. And then we also operate the Snyder Report. You can probably figure out how we got the name. But that is a daily digital publication newsletter that goes out to about 50,000 Hoosiers across the state of Indiana. And then we also have my Snyder Report. The my is spelled M-I, which right now goes to about 25,000 Michiganders. And I found out the hard way, it's Michiganders. So that's what I do. My background, I was on the radio for about 4 years. I did a 3 to 6 on WBAT out of Marion, did about 6 months at WOWO in Fort Wayne. Before that, I was in the financial services industry. I got my start there as an active trader at Charles Schwab, moved to the options desk, went to the retail side at Merrill Lynch, and then finally, after 9/11, went into the, we'll just say the compliance side and became the anti-money laundering officer for Fifth Third Securities and then eventually NRP Financial. I'm a veteran, served in the United States Army, and the Indiana Army National Guard, both as a light infantryman and an MP. So that's a little bit about myself.
Wow, that's great. I didn't even know all of that about you. So that's really interesting. And I do want to talk about your media expertise a little later, just because that is such an important issue and impacts impacts politics in such a visceral way. So, yeah. But first, I'd love to just tell. I want to talk about why this race is so important. Your opponent is the incumbent Congressman Jim Banks. I don't know how that gentleman ever got elected, but he's got elected, and now we've seen what he's all about. So tell us why this election is so important.
It's important because we're watching. There's so many reasons why it's important. Jim was elected in 2016. He barely had a Democrat candidate then. There was a Libertarian running against him in 2016, which happened to be my wife.
Wow, cool.
So he won, but when we take a look at Jim Banks' tenure in the in Congress, he likes to complain a lot about gas prices, inflation. You can go down the line, veterans, But the fact is, he's been there 6 years and has nothing to show for it. Has nothing to show to the voters of the 3rd district. And then when you throw in, January 6th, we're all watching these hearings. They like to think that we're not, but when you have 25 million people watching these hearings, people are paying attention. And he is he's part of the January 6th. He tweeted about it. Senators are going to get their steps in. And, just to be honest, he's and I like to say a threat to our democracy, because whoever is elected this time will be voting to certify the next presidential election. He's already shown once that he is willing to throw out 81 million votes and try to install Trump illegally. There's no indication that he will not do that again. He likes to take on the culture war issues. That's all he talks about in Congress. He's first in line to do genitalia check at local girls' soccer games to make sure there are no boys playing in the girls' soccer games. Imaginary CRT, and I tell Jim all the time, Jim, I'll make you a deal. If you can find any school in Indiana's 3rd congressional district that is teaching a master's level program on race to kindergartners, I will join you and banning that. And so far, nothing. So he likes to lean into the culture wars, but to be honest, that doesn't help put food on the table for hardworking families. That doesn't help put gas in gas tanks, as we're paying, $5 a gallon now. That doesn't help lower the cost of prescription drugs. That doesn't help veterans get the benefits that they need.
Well, those are all great reasons. I think, I just don't think it can be overemphasized. The statement you made that it's so important because he is a threat to democracy, and him being reelected really does put our democracy at risk. And so I think that is really one of the most powerful statements that you've made. And I think that's really something that people really need to know, because he really is out there on the edge, denying the outcome of the 2020 election and doing whatever he can to egg on people to violence and to overthrow our government. So I want to talk a little bit about the media work that you do, because when I was working with Democratic women running for the state legislature in 2020, I'm doing it again this year. But one of the things that we learned was that there was this insulated stream of information coming from the national level right down into probably the radio stations you mentioned, local small radio stations that people listen to out in the country where, like you live, where they don't have much internet, and so they still listen to these small radio stations to get their local news, and it includes all kinds of really racist and misogynistic programming. And much of it, based in religion, and this, like we're allowed to be, bigots because our religion says we can. So how do we get around that as Democrats? How do we reach voters when they're being inundated with this nationalized messaging that's coming to all of these particularly rural areas?
It's difficult. When I got fired from WOWO in Fort Wayne, that's a 50,000 watt station during the day. They went back to programming that was, everything you described and more. And, I thought to myself, how do we get around that? So that's when we started the Indiana Talks Network. It originally was just local personalities that couldn't get on the radio, but had something to offer. We were approached by Stephanie Miller, and so we got her going. Tom Hartman joined in, Democracy Now. So now we were starting to mirror in a lot of ways the we'll just say over the air radio that you hear in your car, except we were left of center, not far right. And that just continued to grow. And, I had a friend of mine that was a Republican, and he made fun of me a little bit, saying, you're only broadcasting, or you're only marketing to 35 to 40% of Indiana. And I'm like, yeah, but 80% of them listen. So that was one way we found to get around, what's happening on your AM dial when you're riding in your car, and the very hateful messages that come from that type of radio. A good friend of mine, Robin Winston, he suggested that maybe I start a newsletter too. This was several years ago, and I'm like, I'm kind of busy right now. And I didn't do it. And I'm kicking in myself to this day, because we could have had so much more if I would have just started those 2 years earlier. And he came around one other time and said, how about it, Gary? So we started it, and we started it with his help. And now we have grown to 50,000 plus readers each day. And it is literally read by, the courthouses and city halls across Indiana, all the way into the White House. We have paid subscribers inside the White House. And so, that part has been pretty awesome. Dana Nessel, the Attorney General from Michigan, her campaign reached out to me and asked me if I'd consider starting the same type of newsletter up in Michigan, and they would be our first sponsor. So we did that, and that's grown to about 25,000 subscribers. We have a daily open rate on each one of about 33 to 35%, and a monthly open rate of about 98%.
Wow. Well, that's great. So, and I really applaud your efforts to really inform Hoosiers, because it's hard. That's one of the reasons I started this podcast, because that's what we learned in 2020, which is like, we couldn't get our messaging for all of our candidates. We couldn't get it out there. We couldn't get it to voters. We could get it to all the people who were going to vote for our candidates anyway, but we couldn't get it out to the broader audience. So I really appreciate your work in that area. I think
one thing that candidates need to keep in mind, and Republicans are notorious for doing this, and I shouldn't say notorious, it's actually a smart move on their part. We're very popular during the primary because they're talking to Democrats. Our audience are your Democrat voters, your activists, your people of influence. But a lot of them tend to, veer away towards when the general election comes, and I got to remind them, go listen to your AM talk radio and tell me how many Republican candidates you hear on there. You hear them all doing ads. I said, they're keeping their base fired up. And when you stop doing something that got you elected for your base and stop doing it for the general election, your base thinks you're walking away from them because they're not hearing you every day like they were.
So you recommend Democratic candidates trying to get onto local radio? Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, at least, yeah. I'm going to go on local radio. To win my election, I need Republicans. I need those 35% of Republicans that really are disgusted with Jim Banks and Donald Trump, and they're out there. So yeah, but we'll still stay on Indiana Talks too, because we want to make sure that our base is staying fired up also.
Excellent. Okay, so tell me, what are the issues that are resonating in the 3rd district? What's happening there, and what are voters excited about?
You know, um, just judging by emails that I send out for my campaign, Democrats and Republicans alike are really fired up about January 6th. And I know you ran for office. Everybody wants to offer you political advice. Everybody wants to be your campaign manager.
Right.
And maybe I started doing that early on, but the one thing that keeps people fired up is the fact that Donald Trump and Jim Banks tried to overthrow our election and have the votes of 81 million Americans, more than any other presidential election in history, thrown out so they can install basically a puppet government of Donald Trump and to a certain extent, Jim Banks.
So, well, that's great to hear that people are, fired up about that. It's hard to know. I mean, I watch it. I'm concerned. I'm, outraged and blown away. But I was already outraged, and so,
Right.
so I hope that it's reaching more than people like me and you, and other people are getting outraged by it.
And we can't look past though that people are, the inflation that's happening right now. People are having trouble putting gas in their gas tank to get to work. That's partly due to inflation, your basic supply and demand. But let's keep in mind why the price of gas has doubled over the last year. Oil profits have tripled and quadrupled. So I think that there is a certain part of what's happening is the price gouging. I don't doubt that for a minute. And now we've seen President Biden say he's going to ask for a 3-month federal gas holiday, where here in Indiana, we're raising taxes again on gasoline going into July 1st. Can you imagine the uproar if instead of getting rid of the gas tax, President Biden came on TV and the radio and said, we're going to go ahead and raise taxes again on gasoline because you're just not paying enough.
Yeah. Well, I can't imagine. It's just, and well, I will tell you though, I mean, I'm shocked at, again, this media disinformation that's out there. I was at a protest where Todd Young was going to show up. So we were out there protesting, and it was a populated place. It was a state park beach. So we were out there, and there were people walking by, and there were young people who came along and said, "Oh, what are you doing? Yeah, I want to join your protest. It was great." And then afterwards, I was talking to this young woman who was, showing us how to do TikTok because none of us could figure it out. And it was very helpful and it was very nice. But then she said something like, well, I don't like, Joe Biden because, the gas prices. I was like, dang it, like, what are you watching? What are people listening to or watching that is telling them that? That blows me away every time I meet somebody like that. And then she said, oh, and it's because he's closed off the pipelines. And you're like, what? Like,
it's perception is a lot of people's reality. When you take a look at gas prices, because that seems to be the number one issue right now. We are producing more oil in this country than we did when Joe Biden took office. We had the largest one-year drop in oil production in 2020 under President Trump. Gas prices started going up 6 months before Joe Biden took office and kept going up until it looks like now they finally stabilized a little bit and are heading down a little. But, this inflation started way before Joe Biden took office. When you're giving people money to survive, and maybe not everyone needed it to survive, and they put that money in the bank. And when we come out of this pandemic and people start spending it and the supply is not there to keep up with it, then yes, you're going to have inflationary pressures. That's what we're seeing now. But, when you take a look at Target and Walmart, this is the financial advisor in me coming out.
Yes.
They have inflated inventories now. They are having sales a lot earlier and a lot more often than they have. So, the news is there that prices will probably start coming down. It's just going to take time for them to come down for supply to meet up with that demand.
Great. All right. So there's a number of other issues that I want to talk to you about. So one of them, of course, is labor. I've been so excited to see, labor organizing on the rise. The labor market is on our side. People, I can't remember now the number, but many, millions of jobs that are still laying open with no one working them. And something like, I think nationally, 20 million women who left, professional women who left the workforce in the pandemic who have not returned. So the question, of course, is how can we change the culture surrounding unions so that people are more amenable to unions, such that we can rebuild a middle class in this country?
Well, first of all, we start by passing the PRO Act. That's a labor-friendly bill that helps build unions, and when unions are strong, families are strong.
Right.
We'll start by saying that. And when we take a look at a lot of these job openings, we need to take a look at childcare. When we look at childcare, I have a daughter that pays almost 45 to 50% of her income to take her children to daycare. Whereas I support President Biden's plan to cap daycare expenses at 7% of a family's income. That would allow and almost encourage the women that didn't go back to work after the pandemic to get back into the workforce. Number two, we got to look at education. Indiana's education is deplorable. Both the attack on public education and the amount of people going on to college. If I had it to do over again, if I'm young, why would I go to college right now? To be saddled with tens of thousands of dollars worth of debt. So we also need to start taking a look at forgiving student loan debt, and B, making public schools tuition free for people. I think that's an investment we need to make in our young people. Matter of fact, just our people in general. And I'll tell you a story. My son works at a major retail grocer. I'll just say it, Kroger. And when he started there, he joined the union. He was 16 when he started. So he is a union thug at 17.
All right.
And at first he wasn't too happy they were taking that money out each week. But as he started working there, and management maybe wasn't treating employers the way they should have been, we started telling him to talk to your union rep, and he did. And before you know it, he was coming home saying, hey, I have vacation they never told me about. I have sick time they never told me about. Well, the union got that for him, and they let him know that he had it because their employer wasn't. So I think when people like my son, when they get a taste of union, he won't. He says he wants to switch jobs at someday, but he's not going to do it unless he can get a union job. So I think the rise in unions, the popularity in unions, and the important role they play in protecting workers against large corporations is on the rise. And I think numbers are starting to reflect that.
A little bit, yeah. I'm really excited about the notion that industries who've never been unionized before, particularly industries dominated by women who've never been unionized. I'm really excited at the possibility that they will, become more unions that support women, and mostly caretaking sorts of industries. Childcare, home health care, nursing home care. Many nurses have unions, but many don't. So And of course, we've seen that, one particular union that's dominated by women has been just completely crushed by our state legislature, and that is, of course, the teachers union. They,
Right.
go out of their way to just crush that union. So I'm really excited about this opportunity for women to step up and take leadership in union organizing and really demanding benefits that support women's issues, paid maternity leave, pregnancy accommodations in the workplace, childcare, all of those issues that really just are ignored now. So anyway, so that's my little piece on it. But anyway, so now let me switch issues again. Let's talk about the environment. I don't know how the third district ranks. I know Indiana has more coal ash lagoons than any other state in the country. Most of them are lying next to waterways where from which people draw their drinking water. That's the case where I live up here on Lake Michigan. We have coal ash lagoons sitting, right next to the lake, and they are leaching their, poisonous contents, arsenic, mercury, lead, all kinds of other terrible things into Lake Michigan. And so I know that they are also on many of the rivers of Indiana. So I'm not sure how your district stacks up as far as coal ash lagoons, but we have all kinds of issues all over the state. Of course, the underground plumes south of Indianapolis, in Franklin, and then some deforestation issues we have to talk about, and of course the wetlands that are now not protected, hardly at all.
Right.
A small amount of wetlands are still protected, but for the most part, wetlands are no longer protected in Indiana, which will, wreak havoc, frankly, on flooding and water quality issues as we move forward. So tell us what your position is on all of those environmental issues and what you'd like to do.
Well, I'm not sure, where the third district ranks, but I know that Indiana as a whole ranks near the bottom when it comes to the clean air we breathe. It's towards the bottom in the clean water we drink, and it's horrible. And the Indiana General Assembly and to a certain extent the 4 years prior to the Biden administration, the environment took a backseat to just about every corporate issue there was.
Right.
And we were already bad. Now we're worse. And, thank goodness we have someone like Joe Biden in office right now that is, again, putting the environment as a priority. But until we change the state house, we may not see the benefits of what the Biden administration is doing until we change the culture down at the state house. When we take a look at what Indiana has done when getting rid of the subsidies for solar panels so people can go solar, it's horrible. And here in the third district, we have a town just to I guess that'd be to the west of us. It's called Andrews, a small town, unlike, not many small towns across Indiana. And they had a big plant in there at one point. I believe it was called Dana Corporation. And they can't drink the water that comes out of their taps from their wells because it is so polluted from a factory that has been gone for years.
Wow.
And our congressman has done nothing to help them. The state has done nothing to help them. And they probably, use more bottled water per capita than about probably any town or city in the state of Indiana. And if you don't have clean water to drink and bathe in and fix your food, then your quality of life goes down because you don't have that water available. You have to go purchase water, and nobody wants to move to a town where they can't drink the water. I support President Biden. I think it's time that we start offering corporations incentives And when I say incentives followed by a heavy stick. And I think that we need more incentives to people like you and me to become more climate friendly. We're going to Glacier National Park at some point, and they have ice on their, or at least they did on one of their lakes. That's the longest that the ice has ever been on there. When we start seeing place after place, hurricanes, tornadoes where they've never happened,
Right.
Ice where it hasn't been this late, fires where there've never been fires before or more often. One of our vacation last year, we were in Phoenix or the Grand Canyon area, and driving up to the Grand Canyon from Phoenix, was almost a light show in itself with the fires burning
Oh, wow.
along the side of the road.
Wow.
And we have to at some point realize that climate change is real. It's being facilitated by us. And if we don't change it, it may not be in my lifetime. I'm getting old, but life as we know it is going to be severely compromised because we are not paying attention to the environment now. I mean, I'll use this as an example. Indiana is a great place to be a sportsman. There's a lot of places to go hunting, fishing, but when you go fishing and they're saying, don't eat the fish because there are carcinogens in it, then that's a problem.
Right. Right. So, and I do want to call out the infrastructure bill that really is addressing places like you mentioned, Andrews. Let's hope that municipality is able to get some of the funding that's coming through the state revolving fund. Many of the loans, those are state revolving fund is a loan program, but a lot of the infrastructure money is really just going to be increasing those budgets. And there are opportunities for those loans to get forgiven by municipalities for hardship purposes or, difficult or neighborhoods. So there is some opportunity coming up, and I'm really excited about that.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the infrastructure bill because it's a bill that it's a bipartisan bill,
right?
That my opponent voted against.
Oh.
Maybe the roads that he drives on where he lives in Virginia aren't bad, but if he would ever come back here and drive the county roads, the state highways, even to a certain extent the federal highways, he would realize that this was much needed money for the district that he voted against. It has a far-reaching effect. It expands internet to places like me. We're barely able to do this interview because I have really crappy internet. And it expands the internet to places like my house, my neighbor's house, who is a farmer, and that infrastructure bill allows farmers. I have farmers all around me. It allows farmers to drive on good roads so they don't tear up their equipment, safe bridges, expands internet access out to people like us, where they can use all the technology that they need to use to run their farm. My next door neighbor is a teacher. And, when we were locked down for the schools, he would have to go in to the school parking lot to teach his class because he does not get a good enough internet signal to teach his class. And while he's teaching that class, his children are in the back seat doing their classes because they don't have internet to do their classes at home. So the infrastructure bill is a once in a generation opportunity. Jim Banks voted against it.
And it really is going to help a lot of these smaller municipalities who have water issues, who have combined sewer overflow problems, where they can separate their storm sewers and otherwise, do more work to help water quality in their municipalities.
Absolutely.
Not just big infrastructure, but everything from rain gardens and other green infrastructure that will really help water quality in their areas. So, all right, great. Okay, so wait, now what was the other issue that I wanted to get to? Let's see. Well, is there anything else before I just run away with this again? Anything else that you want to talk about? What are the issues that are in your platform that you think are the most important?
Well, I think we've talked about the climate, we've talked about infrastructure, we've talked about January 6th. I think there are two important issues coming up. The first one being the bipartisan gun bill that's passing.
Oh, right.
That's gonna pass. It may not be everything that I want, but it's a start. I told people a long time ago when Newtown happened that if 21 dead kindergartners didn't do it, nothing will. Well, apparently, it was 19 dead fourth graders that at least get this started. And then the second is obviously Roe versus Wade. That's going to be coming down. Now, we don't know how it's going to turn out. That was a draft opinion. It could change, but I would guess not. And that's literally going to take a constitutional right away from women. And to me, that is, if that doesn't fire you up to vote as a woman, then nothing will. Because it's not only that they want to outlaw it in Indiana, they want no exceptions. So if you are the victim of rape or incest, Jim Banks has come out and said, you will carry that baby to term, or you will go to prison, and many times longer than the rapist or the attacker himself. And if your life is in danger, the tubal pregnancies, if your life is in danger from that, you're going to die if you can't terminate that. So Jim Banks, my opponent, and the Republicans are okay with women going to prison for not carrying a pregnancy to term or dying because they can't end a pregnancy. Let that sink in a minute.
Yeah. It's too much. It's too much to even get your head around some days. I'm not sure where we'll go at that point. Ugh, okay, sorry. All right, so I will say part of the new gun bill, which I was pleased to see, would be fixing the red flag laws that are out there. We've seen ours in Indiana be really kind of a failure. And so I'm really happy to see that. That does really address a lot of issues for domestic violence. Something like almost twice as many women died as a result of domestic violence during the pandemic than before. And much of that is gun related. So let's hope that does something to save women's lives. And then, yeah, I'm not sure where we're going to go with Roe v. Wade. It's almost too much to get your head around it. The thought of women losing their, right to control their own body, their own futures, their own financial security, is just, you just can't even believe it. I mean, never would the court say to a man, well, if you're going to, if you have a child, you will have to give up your financial security.
Two things.
Yeah.
on the gun bill.
Yes.
It's not everything that I wanted to see, but while they did put in, expanded wait times for, anyone under the age of 21. Think about that. Anyone under a teenager to buy an assault weapon. Right. Wait a little longer.
There's my FedEx delivery probably.
That's all right.
Sorry.
But just think about that. I know myself at 18, the fact that an 18-year-old can go buy an assault weapon and walk around with it, it to me is just amazing. And how we can let people buy guns without going through a background check, whether you're buying it from a dealer, from a gun show, or an individual, to me is just insane. And I forget my second point because I was focused on the gun. So
Sorry. Yeah, it's my dog. My dog does that kind of thing. So, all right, great. Okay, so we are running out of time. So, Gary, I know you need help with your campaign. You've got to raise a lot of money to beat out Jim Banks and all of the ads and mailers he's going to send out. So, how can people help you?
Well, first of all, they can go to snyderforcongress.com, find out more about our campaign and donate. People really underestimate how much money it takes to run a congressional campaign. The amount of money I spend in gas alone right now, traveling to 13 counties every single day, is probably been our number one expense so far.
Wow.
And it's important. We're not taking corporate money. We're not taking PAC money, mainly because, as you know, it's usually not offered to the incumbent, but also it's not, I don't want to be beholden to a corporation, whether I agree with them or not, or a political action committee. So donating is obviously the top priority right now. We gotta, we're not going to match Jim Banks in money. So what we have to do is come up with different ways to get our message out. 13 counties, that's an awful big area to go door to door on. But we need money for yard signs, for digital ads, for walking piece. I mean, it just goes on and on. Yeah. So donating, number one. Number two, take a sign, put it in your yard. That helps build name recognition. It shows support. Same with a bumper sticker or bumper magnet. People don't put stickers on their cars anymore. So, there's just all different ways, but follow us on social media. Those are the ways that you can help. And this race is winnable. The people that are helping me, very smart people, the likes of Robin Winston and others. They're very smart people. They've won blue and red areas before. They know how to do this. We just need the resources to do it. Excellent.
All right. Where can people find you?
SnyderForCongress.com. You can search Gary Snyder on Facebook or Twitter. It's probably pretty easy to find, and follow along our campaign there. Sign up for our mailing list, email list. It's all of it's important.
Excellent. All right, great. All right, terrific. I think you're a wonderful candidate, Gary. I think this is one of the most important races in Indiana. And I really hope that people can dig deep and, pull out some coins from under the cushions, whatever you got to do to get some funding to help you win. Because this is very important. Yep. All right, great. All right. Well, thank you so much, Gary. And we'll be following you and, and making sure that we're paying attention to the campaign, and maybe, we'll have to do another podcast just to get an update as we move along.
I appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.